Welcome to the Doug and Mike Show. I'm Doug.
Hey, and I'm Mike.
And we have real conversations with real people. Mike, who do we have on today?
Hey, we've got a killer show today. Super excited. Two amazing women, two professionals, two friends of ours, two sisters of ours, quite frankly. Heather Mazurkiewicz and Jazz Zombo. Thank you both so much for taking time out of your schedule. Glad to have you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
All right, so we are going to just dive right in. We have been working on in Florida. We are, for our listeners out there, as firefighters. Unfortunately, Florida is like in the back of the pack here in the race and the marathon to get cancer benefits to firefighters, and I think like 40 some odd states had already, secured some kind of benefit for firefighters. And here we are, Florida, with, the big Disney mouse down there that brings trillions of dollars to our economy. I think we're like the 9th or 10th biggest economy in the world. And we've got 50,000 firefighters, pretty established state, lots of protections in place, collective bargaining for public employees, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't have firefighter cancer coverage. So why don't you kind of set the tone for us, Heather or Jazz, jump in there and tell us about, where we were through the years leading up to the point that we're at now.
Well, legislatively, there was a bill that was filed back in 2000. It was 2007. That was filed by then Senator Jeff Atwater, who became our chief financial officer and our fire marshal for us here in the state of Florida. That bill never made it out of committee back then and wasn't refiled until we were fortunate enough to have Heather Fitzenhagen out of Fort Myers refile the exact same bill in 2015. So the bill's been in play. The coverage has been in play for, more than a decade that we've been fighting for this. And there's people out there that have been fighting prior to the 2007 date, obviously, to try to get this coverage for Florida. But the battle's really been intense in, I'd say, the last 4 years.
And what is...
Jeff, would you agree?
Yeah, I believe the same thing.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us, give us a little background, Heather, about yourself and how you tie into the issue and what makes it important to you.
Well, it's an interesting scenario because I don't come from the fire service. I did not have family there. My whole background's private sector. I was the CEO for a large not-for-profit here in Southwest Florida. I won a ride-along with the City of Cape Coral's fire department, and that day was December 11th of 2013. And that
very cool.
Yeah, it totally changed my life. And I quit my job, went through the academy at 45, and became a firefighter EMT. But what got me interested was the day that I did my ride-along, the guys were talking to me about the fact that cancer was an issue with the fire service and that it wasn't considered an occupational disease. And the majority of my private sector life in the last 20 years, I've been extremely involved in local and state politics. So when you fall in love with something, you want to do everything that you can to help. And my strengths lied in the legislative side. So I figured I could just go ask somebody in Tallahassee and get them to pass this bill.
Yeah.
It was me being naive on that, on my part. And then Jazz and I met, and I'll let her take it from there with regard to how we met and how she came to that point to be a part of this battle also.
Yeah, Jazz, why don't you tell us about the website and stuff that you created and then, the boots on the hill.
All right, so me and Heather, we met because about 4 years ago, I had been running marathons in my fire gear trying to bring awareness to cancer in the fire service.
You mean, wait a minute. Running marathons in your fire gear? Wow.
And at the time that me and Heather met, I had already completed two 50-mile races in my fire gear as well. and had brought a lot of attention in the civilian world, we call it, to the cause in general. And then I organized a run for Central Florida firefighters to run across Seminole County, so we can bring more attention to it just before the legislative session, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And that's how Heather got involved, because she saw me posting all over the place saying, "Hey, let's get together, let's do this run." And she was already compassionate about it too. So she was like, "I'm coming up." I said, "Please do. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to have you." And she came up, and we ran, 25 miles without any type of, trophies or medals or T-shirts or anything. It was just to bring awareness to the cause. And then we kind of became partners in crime, and we have been just dedicated to getting this bill passed. Me personally, it affects me because I have had cancer twice.
Yeah, you're a cancer survivor, 2-time cancer survivor.
Correct. I've had cancer twice. I had late stage melanoma, where basically I went into cardiac arrest twice during my treatments. And then I had early stage cervical cancer. And right after I had my surgery, about 2 months later, I ran my first marathon in full gear while I was receiving treatments and after surgery. And so just the whole, and I've also been around my Central Florida brothers and sisters who have been diagnosed with cancer and who have passed away of cancer. I've still reached, in contact with these firefighters' families and see the struggles they deal with on a daily basis because of the fact they've lost their loved ones and lost their sole income and benefits and all that stuff, and just see them losing their houses and just barely making it by because they've lost their firefighter, their loved one, and so that's why I became a big advocate for this, along with Heather,
And for our listeners, a marathon, that's 26.2 miles. That is a long way to drive a car, first of all, to ride a bicycle. But you did it, and you did it in gear. That's I'm very proud of you for doing that.
I feel pretty.
No, I actually feel very small and irrelevant.
It's not easy. I can tell you.
But I did climb a flight of stairs today. I did that.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Down there, Doug. Sit down.
So it's funny because I had a few people ask me through this whole journey of getting the protections for firefighters. People would say, well, don't firefighters have like breathing apparatus? Don't they have like, something they breathe when they go into a fire? They breathe clean air. They don't breathe smoke. I mean, why, for just the layperson, explain how this has become a problem?
Well, it's interesting because both Jazz and I are also in our individual departments. Me is public education information for the North Collier Fire District, and then Jazz with her department. We also volunteer for an organization that I hope everybody is familiar with, and that's the Firefighter Cancer Support Network. So a lot of what we do as representatives for that is, education. So talking about the topic of cancer in the fire service and why this is happening, it's awesome that you mentioned that, because that is the misnomer that, a lot of people think it's because of what we're breathing in, and that's part of the problem. But we've become really good as a profession to make sure that we are, full PPE on air from initial attack all the way through to the end of overhaul. What the science has shown us is that these carcinogens that are in the environments that we're going into are getting through weak spots in our gear. There's some reports that will say that it's getting through our gear and then onto our skin and absorbing into our bloodstream. And in different parts of the body, obviously the skin is more permeable than other parts. So, and we all know that when the heat opens up the pores. I mean,
right, exactly.
Stuff out there, they charge good money for stuff like that, right?
Right.
So, that's really where a lot of the issues is. And I know, Jazz can talk about how we've had to really educate firefighters from the ground level and the public, but it's really been the firefighters from the ground level as to what they need to be doing and how we've got to change that culture and that mindset of dirty gear and stuff like that. Right, Jazz? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. I know that, and sometimes we get a little bit of resistance because, us firefighters, that dirty gear is a badge of honor. It shows that we worked. It shows that we've fought fire and we're manly. Yeah, woo, and
right.
And now we're finding that gear and that soot that's all over our gear is killing us. And now we have to go in and say, you need to clean your gear. You got to clean your helmet. And they're like, excuse me? And I said, I'm telling you, and let me show you the statistics. Let me show you why it's important for you to clean your gear. And now that they see the statistics and they're seeing the numbers and they're correspondent with the members they've lost in their department, they're like, yeah, this is probably a good idea to do gross decon. It's probably a good idea to
absolutely.
It's a whole culture change.
Yes, and I know that I recently taught my department of 450 firefighters, and I got really good reception. I was nervous, but I got really good reception, and I think that's going to be the norm based on the studies that are coming out.
Yeah, it was like it used to be like a prank. It was like if you wanted to prank your rookie firefighters, you clean their helmet, and they had for years, they had been building all the soot and all the grunge and the grime and all the dirt. And that was like you said, it was really a badge of like, hey, I got job on me. I got work on me. Like, look at me. I'm in a busy house. And, they would shine his helmet. And it was basically like, you neutered them. Exactly. You took away their prized possession. And we had guys that actually got in fist fights over it, and so it was a real thing. And I think it's still in a lot of places. I mean, do you find traveling and teaching? Do you find that there are still some places that it's like really a new idea for them?
I can't speak to what the resistance that Jazz has met, but for the most part. Every place that I've gone, you might get resistance right in the very beginning, but once you go through the program, it's so well done, the program that the Firefighter Cancer Support Network does, because we start off with the statistics. I mean, I stand up in front of them and I'm like, if you don't have the pucker factor this morning, I haven't done my job.
Right, absolutely.
Right, that's true. I got to show you what the issues are, that this is a real problem, that cancer is going to kill, 2 out of 3 of you in this room. But there are things, but we're going to end with what we, how do we overcome that? And it's not rocket science. It's really simple things like we've been talking about, decontamination on scene, taking the ice machines out of the bays, doing everything we can to eliminate or significantly reduce that diesel exhaust exposure. I mean, to station design, there's so many things that we just didn't realize as a profession that we can easily make these little adjustments that will significantly reduce our exposures. So.
Well, just look at it this way. When I first started, we only had latex gloves for OB deliveries.
Now, was that when Ben Franklin was here?
No, a little bit later than that. The next generation, 2.0. Thank you very much.
30-year plus guy on the job. He deserves a little rousing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So, and now if you told a newbie that we don't have gloves on the truck, they're like, well, we refuse to run a call, so it's like crazy how far we've come along.
I want to make sure we mention Keith Tyson's name too, because he's what role is he playing with the Cancer Network?
Well, go ahead, Jess.
Keith is the president of the Florida Cancer Support Network. He's also the VP educator and research basically developer for the Southeast region as well. And he's pretty much been the person that has laid the foundation down to education and our legislation, getting the research done down in the University of Miami, or started and getting it rolling down at the University of Miami. He's been a huge contributor. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to come up to Tallahassee because he's been traveling everywhere to like the NFPA 1500 stuff and all these different conferences that are going to change basically the future of our fire service. So, but he's a huge contributor to like everything that deals with cancer in the fire service, education, research, and everything. So.
And Keith has a personal story too, for those of you out there that don't understand where that comes into play. He's a retired Miami-Dade firefighter. 6 months after retirement, at the young age of 55, was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And he'll tell you his story about how it just wasn't something that was talked about at the fire station. Like, we don't talk about cancer or anything like that. So, I mean, Keith literally, for a very long period of time, was leading the parade. And he was the only one in the parade to talk about this cancer and how we have to change things.
I remember that. I remember those early days.
He really was. And the fact that you've got funding for the University of Miami, Keith's the one that reached out to the University of Miami a decade ago to start talking about, can I get my firefighters in there to get a second opinion? You know, organizations like the Health and Safety Collaborative, which are amazing, have been born out of the foundation that, you know, that Keith laid out there for all of us. So it takes that one person that's courageous enough to say, I know we don't want to talk about this, but we really have to. Another person, Vicki Shepard out of Palm Beach County, same thing. You know, the two of them, in fact, Keith will tell you Vicki's been talking about it longer than he has.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's been a long.
I want to make sure that we do
hard-fought battle by a lot of people.
I mean, Keith is amazing. I know him personally, and it's what he's done. But you know, just as much of an impact that I felt was the boots on the hill.
Yeah.
So
you
guys single-handedly, assembled that. And it wasn't embraced at the beginning.
No.
Which I embraced it. I'm proud to say I embraced it. You know? But
for the amount of people that tried to tell us not to do it, talk us out of it, actually add pressure from the professional standpoint, was the same equal amount of people that said, hey, we've got you. And when Jazz and I got together and did the first boot display three years ago, we knew it was the right thing to do no matter what, because we had the sister of a fallen firefighter from Reedy Creek. She came from Alabama. The families of our fallen brothers and sisters they wanted to do something. And being able to set their son or their daughter or their husband or their wife's boots on the steps of the Capitol to make that statement, it gave them something to do. So when we did it 3 years ago, it was for the families to make that statement. And then, this past year, when we told the legislators, you're going to have to walk through our graveyard to get to your job, it was quite impactful.
Oh,
right?
That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's powerful. I mean, it's always, I always measure things by my mom's response to it. And my mom called me that day and she just had a tear in her eye basically and was like, that Mike, that was like, I think the first thing she said was, I'm proud of you, because she kind of assumed that I had a big role in it, which I didn't. But, she's like, it was powerful. Seeing that was just, and then, of course, all the other people around us, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors, and it was huge. So I from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you for the persistence, and just keeping your head up and making that work, because I feel like that was one of, if there were just several things that got the attention of lawmakers, that was certainly one of the most powerful things.
So will you continue that?
I don't know.
The bills passed?
I don't know. Do you want to use your political capital over and over and over again? You know what I mean? What if I'm not sure.
I think you do, because as much of protection we got, I'm sure there'll come a point when, discussion will have, like, look how much this is costing us and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's a reinforcement. It's like, yeah, did you see the boots on the hill?
Yeah.
So we were talking. We were up to the Capitol one day, and we were talking and laughing about. You remember the old cartoon video of how a bill becomes the law?
Yeah.
Do you think that after watching and being such a huge part of getting this bill across the finish line, don't you just want to burn that little cartoon?
I think is good for first and second graders, but for those of us that have been involved in the political process, know that the political process is about relationships, nothing more, nothing less.
Absolutely.
Tell
Good
us,
or
like,
bad?
yeah, tell us, just like, give us a quick just wrap up of like how this thing just came across the finish line these last several weeks of the session, which was just, this last month, really. Obviously our Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Petronas, played a huge role in that, but just take us through like the last couple of weeks.
I can't even begin to explain the roller coaster that the last couple of weeks was.
Oh my God.
It was crazy. I tell everybody, I got in my car at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning when we, as the FPF, Florida Professional Firefighters, decided that we were going to do that fully involved at the Capitol. And I happen to have the majority leader is in my district, and I texted him and I said, if you can get to the Speaker of the House, for those of you that don't know, the Speaker of the House was blocking the bill for personal reasons. So I texted the majority leader and I said, we're coming. I'm letting you know you have 2 days to get to the Speaker. We're coming up to the Capitol, and our voices are going to be heard. The boots were for one thing. Now now the whole state's coming. And literally was in the car on the way up there thinking it's not going to happen. And it was, that we're just going to do this fully involved and keep the pressure on, but thinking that we didn't stand a chance because of the personalities that were involved. And I think between the boot display, between the fully involved at the Capitol, the union getting involved, between the Facebook page for the Florida cancer coverage page, and getting the people involved and calling and texting the speaker, two things happened. That reporter released an article that gave the speaker's personal cell phone number.
Right.
That was a game changer.
Yeah. And the fire chief from the city of Miami, who had a long-standing relationship with the speaker, made a phone call. So it was pressure in relationships, which is what happens in politics. And I'll never understand exactly what it was, but I don't care. It's like I don't want to watch sausage being made. I just want to have it at the end, and that's all I care about.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the loss of hope there for so many of us. We just knew that we had to continue to fight, but for us, for you and Jazz and Doug and I being on the board for the Florida Professional Firefighters, I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of hope for it.
No.
We were told before even we did our booth display that it was done.
Yeah.
It wasn't going anywhere, and before session even started.
Yeah, it was like a Hail Mary game-winning catch. It was just unbelievable.
You also want to give a shout out real quick to Omar Blanco with Miami-Dade. Their local brought a bunch of fire gear up with names of brothers and sisters they'd lost, and they had those in the actual halls of the Capitol, in the offices of the legislators, where all those thousands of people who are in the Florida Legislature, they were sitting in those offices, sometimes right next to, like, literally touching the fire gear, and that really was powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. All of those things played a role, but what a lot of people don't understand is the planning that has to go into that. That wasn't just something that just occurred naturally. I mean, we had to reserve the entire Capitol, those steps, everything a year in advance in order
Wow.
to do that display.
Wow.
Yeah, as soon as session ends is when you're allowed to, or when you can go and reserve those. And I can't even make this up. I reserved a spot like the third week of session, because that's when you can really start impacting. When they really start getting down and dirty, it was about the third week. And literally got a phone call from Department of Management Services saying somebody else wants that time. And I'm like, well, that's just too bad. I have it. And they said, no, you don't understand how this is going to work. They're going to go to their member, and their member is going to tell you that you have to move. Politics and relationships.
Yeah.
And that's why we ended up being in the first week of session, which if you look back now, couldn't have worked out better.
Oh yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. That was a blessing. That was absolutely a blessing. Yeah.
It really did. It ended up to really set the tone for the whole legislative session.
And we got a lot of co-sponsors from it too. I think in that day, like that afternoon, we ended up getting 20 more co-sponsors on the House side from it.
Right, absolutely. And you know what? That was an incredible team effort from the FPF, all the locals, all of the stakeholders, yourselves. I mean, we went and hit every office. I mean, 117, I think, because we had a few vacancies in the legislature, but it'll be 117, and like everybody hit every single one. And they couldn't say no. I mean, we framed it up and made it so personal, and you guys made it so personal that how do you stand up against that? How do you go against it's like I think somebody said, we respond to the call for help. We're calling for help.
Yeah.
Now, we're laying on the floor. We need you. And they signed on, and it was incredible to see that happen. I think that was probably one of the other key things that made such a big thing. But we're so excited. We're so blessed to have you on our team and be brothers and sisters together. And we're excited about the future and what we've done, not only for our firefighters that are on the job, but also our firefighters who are off the job. And it's been awesome having a conversation with you guys today. You got anything else you want to add?
Do we have just one quick minute to add?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of questions about the bill. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the bill will not go into effect until 7/1. There's been chatter about the fact that if you work at another department or as an academy instructor, that this coverage is not going to extend to you. The FPF was they were wonderful in how they crafted the wording, and it has to be a higher risk occupation. Well, working at the academy or working at another fire station is a similar risk. It's not higher, it's similar. So there's that. A lot of people have asked about the fact is, what about retirees? And we need to make sure that everybody understands, as long as you stay with your department's health plan, the coverage will extend to you post-retirement for 10 years. You have to remain part of the plan. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen between now and then. There's rulemaking that will take upwards to 6 to 9 months, possibly even a year. And of course, we all know the attorneys are going to be the ones that are going to end up writing this law. But it's an amazing piece of legislation that we all had a part of making history, and it's pretty cool.
Mike, I'll tell you what, these ladies, it just really impressed me with their dedication, and they stick to it.
Hey, wonderful story. Fits the bill so perfectly. Real conversations with real people. And these two ladies, you don't get any more real than they are. So glad they joined us, and so glad you tuned in.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Doug and Mike Show. We're also on Alexa, smart speaker devices like Amazon, Apple Podcasts, under Firefighter News Guys. Check out our stories there. And a special shout out to our sponsor, Chief Miller. You can find him on Instagram at Chief_Miller_. Have a great day.